Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio, and today I have another block for you. This one is called Salem, and I made this one with a rusty red and a dark blue and with a cream colored background, and these are all fabrics from the Kate's Garden Gate line. So this one looks complicated, but it's really an interesting block. It's not complicated. It uses square and a square unit, flying geese units, and then some easy corner triangles, and that's all there is to it. And it is a 9-patch block, so you'll have 3 rows of 3 units to sew together. Now you do have points to match, but that isn't too difficult, so I hope you will stay with me and I'll show you how to make this block. Here are the fabrics that you're going to need to make the Salem block. For A, you're going to need 4 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles. For B, you're going to need 12 2.5 inch squares, and I'm using 2 different prints for the B squares. C is 8 2.5 inch squares, D is 5 4.5 inch squares, E is 4 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles, and G is 8 2.5 inch squares. So first thing I'm going to do is to make flying geese units. So I will need the A and the G pieces, and we'll make some flying geese units from these, and then we'll make another set with the E and the B pieces. So let's start with the A and the G first, and then we'll do the E and the B. I wanted to explain about these B rectangles and the reason they have 2 different fabrics, and that's because I'm working with the 10-inch squares, and I needed the flying geese units, the A pieces and the B pieces to match to get the pattern to look right. I wanted to use the same fabric for the centerpiece, which is a square and a square unit, but you can't get all of these out of one 10-inch square. You can get there's 8 2.5 inch squares, and I got 4 rectangles out of it, but I could not get the other 4 squares. So what these pieces are for the D square, for the one that's in the center. So I'm going to put those aside and not worry about those, but we're going to do flying geese units, and we're going to start first with the A and the G. So on these G squares, we're going to sew from corner to corner, and you can draw a diagonal line on there and follow that, or I'm going to use my tape here on my machine. You can also buy templates or rulers to make flying geese units. You can use foundation paper, whatever is your favorite method. You can do the 4 at a time, the 2 at a time method of making flying geese units if that's your favorite method. So I'm going to go ahead and line these up here on my right side of the rectangle, and I'm going to sew from the center top to the bottom right, and I'm just going to follow the tape that's on my machine. I need to make 4 of these, so I'm just going to chain piece all of these together. And sometimes I draw the line, sometimes I don't. Today I'm not going to, so. There are lots of different ways to make flying geese units. One more. So I'm going to clip these apart, and then I'm going to trim the corner. Get my longer scissors out here. And if you watch my videos, you've seen me do this hundreds of times. I'm going to trim off this outer corner, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to press it back. And I'm going to do that for all 4, and then I'll come back and put on the other square. Okay, so I have 4 flying geese units look like that. And now I'm going to sew on the square to the opposite sides. And do it the same way. I'm going to start at the top center and go down to the lower left corner this time. Now I got all those sewn, I'm going to clip them apart again. And then I'm going to trim off, cut off this outer corner, even a 1/4 inch seam allowance, just like I did on the other side. And this will make our flying geese units. Okay, get those out of the way. Let me press and I'll show you what they look like. Okay, so here they are. I've got 4 of these, so I've got 4 flying geese units. Okay, so for the other flying geese units, I need to use the E rectangles and the B squares and do the same thing. Okay, so here's the other set of flying geese. So what we need to do is just sew these 2 sets together, and they're going to go like this. So I'm just going to get started doing that. I'm going to clip these apart, and then I'm going to press these. So now I have 4 of these units. The next thing I'm going to do is to make the corner units. Those are going to be D and C squares, and I'm going to save one of these D squares for the center. So I'm going to set that aside. And what I need for these is to do these corners, just like I did flying geese units, only they're going to go on opposite corners. So I'll have like one here and one here, and that will make our corner units. So I'm going to go ahead and clip these apart, and then I'm going to sew the square on the opposite corner, and then I will do all the trimming all at once. So I'm just going to flip all of these around and then do the same thing to the opposite corner. Okay, so let's clip these apart. Cut off my leader here. Okay, now I want to trim off the outer corner, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you don't have to be exact, and of course you can always use your rotary cutter. Okay, let's move all these over, and I'm going to press them open, but what we're going to have is this. Okay, so there's all 4 corner units, and that's what those look like. So now I need to do the center, which will be the square and a square unit. So I'm going to make this like I did the corner units by doing sewing a square onto the opposite corners. Then I'll trim those and press, and then I'll put the other 2 on. So I have all of the units sewn together, so now it's time to lay out all the units into the form of the block, and then I'll sew all the units together into rows and then sew the rows together. So I'm going to start with a square and a square unit here in the center, add my flying geese units to the sides, and the flying geese are going to point this way. And then these corner units are going to go this way. There we go. So this is what the block will look like. And now I just need to sew 3 rows, and then I'll sew all the rows together. Okay, I'm going to pin these together here because we've got these 2 diagonal seams that are going to meet. So I'm going to go ahead and pin those together. Get my, there we go. Okay, and then these 2, I'm going to do my pin method here. Go through the points of each of these 2. And then the same here. I'm going to pin these two, nest those two seams together. And pin them in place, and then sew. Okay, now I'm going to put these back to their proper position on my table here, and then I'm going to add the last piece. So now I'm going to sew the rows together, and I'm going to match some seams. Now the center row, I press the seams here open. I'm thinking that will help a little bit with distributing the bulk, because there is a lot of bulk right there in the center. Okay, so here we have that. So I'm going to press and we'll take a closer look at the block. Okay, here's the completed block. So I think that turned out pretty well. I do need to square it up some, because you can see right here, this unit here is a little bit large. So I'm going to trim that up. But I think it turned out really well. I'm happy with the points. And I like how all of this kind of all came together. So this looks like a complicated block, but it's really only using 3 different units. You've got the square and square, you got flying geese, and then you've got just easy corner triangles. So that's all there is to that. So not too difficult of a block. I think it's pretty easy. So I hope you'll give this one a try. Okay, that is it for the Salem block. I think this one turned out pretty well. For one tip though, I would suggest is, if you can manage it on your machine, to use a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance for this block. It'll make the units a little bit easier to go together. Otherwise, it's not a difficult block. Just a scant 1/4 inch seems to help a little bit when you've got a lot of points, like on this one, with the center piece here, the square and the square, and the flying geese units. When you're trying to match all of these points up, if you use a scant 1/4 inch, then you're not going to blunt off your points. So that may help. So if you're able to do that, if you've got a setting on your machine where you can move your needle over just a little bit, that will help. Otherwise, just guide your fabric, just, you know, a thread or two to the side, and that will give you a scant 1/4 inch. Otherwise, it still goes together well. I did not use the scant 1/4 inch on this one, and I think it still turned out pretty well. So I'm happy with it the way it is. And there's anything in here that I would want to rip out and redo. So I'm going to let it go the way it is. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please click that like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and click that notification bell so you'll be notified when the next video comes up. And in the meantime, I hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links, and to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.